I'm Alara and I'm 28 years old. My sister just told me to eat in the kitchen because adopted kids don't deserve to sit with the real family. Everyone at the table laughed like it was the funniest joke in the world. I looked around at these people I had always called family, and I felt my heart break into a million pieces. Even though I felt like crying, I smiled. I reached into my purse and dropped an envelope right in the middle of Mom's fancy plates. "You might want to call your lawyers," I said, my voice calm but strong. "We had a meeting tomorrow about Mom and Dad's will." Share your story in the comments. Hit the like button and subscribe to see what happens next. Mom and Dad both got sick with COVID-19 just a few days apart. My 3 older siblings, Cyrus, Selena, and Vivian, were too worried about themselves to come see them. I was the one who moved in to take care of them. I left my own kids with my husband, Oren, and basically lived at the hospital for weeks. Cyrus said his banking job was too important to risk. Selena said she needed to stay home with her young twins. Vivian said she couldn't handle seeing Mom and Dad sick. But me? I was there every single day. I held their hands, talked to doctors, and made really hard decisions about their treatments. The nurses knew me by name, and the doctors looked to me for answers when things got difficult. When Mom needed someone to sign papers for a special treatment, I signed them. When Dad got worse and needed someone to stay overnight, I slept in that hard, uncomfortable hospital chair until my back hurt and my neck cramped. While my siblings sent flowers and texts asking for updates, I was living the nightmare, watching 2 people I loved more than anything in the world get sicker, even with all the medicine and help they could get. Mom died on a Tuesday morning while I held her hand, whispering promises that I would take care of Dad and make sure he wasn't alone. Dad died 3 days later, and I swear his last words were, "Take care of Alara." At the time, I thought he meant to take care of me emotionally, to help me through the grief. I didn't know what he really meant, or what he and Mom had been planning during those long, painful months. The funeral was like a big Hollywood production. Suddenly, all 3 of my siblings were front and center, crying loudly, accepting condolences as if they had been the devoted children all along. People kept thanking them for being strong and brave. I watched them pretend to be grieving while I stood there hollow-eyed from 6 months of actually taking care of our parents, actually sacrificing, actually loving them in every possible way. You know what's strange about being adopted into a family that already has biological children? No matter how much your parents love you, your siblings never let you forget that you're different. Not in a mean or cruel way at first, just little comments that hurt over time. "Well, you're not really our sister. Mom and Dad chose us," they would say. It starts when you're a kid, little playground cruelties, and it never really stops. As adults, they get really good at being sneaky with it. Family photos I wasn't invited to. Holiday traditions I learned about secondhand on social media. Inside jokes that stopped suddenly when I walked into the room, leaving me standing there like a stranger. Birthday parties for my own kids that my siblings mysteriously couldn't attend, though they never missed each other's kids' celebrations. It was like death by 1,000 tiny cuts, small enough to seem petty if I complained, but together, they made me feel like I didn't belong anywhere. The message was always clear. You're family, but not really. You're included, but only sometimes. You're loved, but differently. But Mom and Dad were different. They never made me feel like I was anything other than their beloved daughter. When I struggled in school, Dad spent hours at the kitchen table helping me with homework, never getting frustrated when I didn't understand something right away. When I got my heart broken at 16, Mom held me while I cried and even threatened the boy who hurt me. They came to every graduation, recital, and important moment, beaming with pride that felt real and unconditional. They were my safe harbor in a family that often felt like stormy seas. When someone would make a thoughtless comment about my adoption, Mom would get that fierce look in her eyes and shut it down immediately. "Alara is our daughter in every way that matters," she'd say firmly. "Blood doesn't make a family. Love does." After the funeral, we all gathered at Mom and Dad's house for the traditional meal families often have after someone dies. It felt wrong being there without them. Their empty chairs at the head of the dining room table were like fingers pointing at our loss, reminding us that the people who held this family together were gone forever. My siblings immediately started talking about what they called practical matters. Selling the house, dividing belongings, closing accounts, handling all the boring business that death leaves behind. It made my skin crawl how quickly they moved from grief to greed, from mourning to money management. "We should get the house appraised soon," Cyrus said, cutting into his ham like we were talking about weekend plans instead of dismantling our childhood home. The market's really good right now. We don't want to miss the opportunity. Selena nodded excitedly, already thinking about what she could get. We need to go through Mom's jewelry collection. Some pieces are really valuable. That diamond necklace alone could be worth thousands. Vivian was already making lists on her phone. I can handle the financial accounts, she said. I'm good with that kind of stuff. I have experience dealing with banks. I sat there, listening to them carve up our parents' lives like they were pieces of a Thanksgiving turkey. The house I cleaned and maintained while taking care of them during their illness. The jewelry I helped Mom organize when she was too weak to lift the heavy boxes herself. The accounts I helped manage when Dad couldn't remember his passwords anymore. They were treating memories as if they were just money. That's when Vivian made her big announcement, with a smile I knew too well, the one that looked nice but had sharp edges hidden underneath. We should do this properly, she said, gesturing around like she was hosting a board meeting. A real family meal to honor Mom and Dad's memory. I'll host it at my place next week. We can make it a proper celebration of their lives. Cyrus and Selena immediately agreed, talking about bringing spouses and kids, making it a multi-generational gathering, turning it into the kind of event that would look good in family photos. When Vivian looked at me, her smile had that familiar edge I recognized from childhood. Elara, you'll come too, of course, though maybe you could handle the cooking. You know how Mom always said you were the best cook in the family, and it would be such a lovely way to honor her memory. The words were like a secret message that only someone who grew up with them would understand. Come to the family dinner, but know your place. Be the helper, not the honored guest. Selena jumped in with her own helpful suggestion that felt like another small blade. Oh, that's perfect. And Elara, could you maybe bring some of those dinner rolls Mom loved? You know, the ones from that little bakery near your house she always raved about? It would mean so much to have them there. I should have seen what was coming. The signs were all there, like little breadcrumbs leading to a trap. The way they huddled together, whispering when they thought I wasn't looking. Their phone calls stopped abruptly when I entered the room. The sudden interest in family dinners that somehow required my work, but not my input or opinions. But I was still grieving. Still exhausted from months of taking care of Mom and Dad. Still desperately wanting to belong to the family I'd never quite fit into, despite decades of trying. So I agreed like I always did when they asked for something. Even though my heart was heavy and my body was tired, I showed up. I cooked. I brought the rolls. I smiled politely while they made jokes and shared stories. I did everything they expected, even though inside, I was furious and hurt. I kept thinking of the envelope I had dropped on Mom's good china, and the lawyers waiting for them. My parents had trusted me, and I wouldn't let my siblings take what they didn't deserve. That day, I realized something very important. Being family isn't about who laughs the loudest, who looks the saddest, or who shows up in the best photos. Being family is about love, sacrifice, and doing the hard things when no one is watching. And I had done all of that. Even if they never recognized it. Even if they never said thank you. Even if they tried to make me feel small. I knew who I was. I knew what I had done. And I knew that my parents had seen it all along. I am Elara, their daughter in every way that matters, and no one can ever take that from me. I spent 3 whole days getting ready for that dinner. I cooked Mom's favorite foods from scratch, just like she used to make them. I even bought fancy wine, even though I didn't really have the money for it. I wanted everything to be perfect. I got my hair done, too, because I wanted to look nice. I thought this dinner would finally be a special time for our family to come together and remember Mom and Dad. I hoped that maybe, after losing them, we could all focus on what really matters, family, love, and being there for each other. I arrived at Vivian's house, which was perfectly clean, with my arms full of food and my heart full of hope. I thought maybe this would finally be the kind of family gathering I had always dreamed about. Maybe we could all share our grief and sadness and support each other. Maybe we could finally feel like a real family again. The first hour of the dinner was actually nice. We talked about Mom and Dad, shared funny stories about them, and laughed about their habits and quirks. We talked about traditions we wanted to keep alive. For a little while, I even started to think maybe I had been wrong about my siblings. Maybe they really did care and wanted to honor our parents' memory. But I should have known better. I should have trusted what I had learned about them over all the years. Things changed during dessert, just when I was starting to feel comfortable and hopeful. I had made Mom's famous apple pie, the one she had taught me to make when I was 12 years old, standing on a step stool. I remembered how her patient hands guided mine as we crimped the edges of the pie crust together. I started cutting the pie and putting it on Vivian's fancy china plates. Then Vivian stood up and cleared her throat, like she was about to say something very important. The room went quiet and my stomach sank. I felt that awful feeling that something bad was about to happen, but I couldn't stop it. Vivian smiled, that fake smile she had practiced over the years, the one that never reached her eyes. "Before we finish tonight, we need to talk about something important," she said. Cyrus and Selena were watching me, their faces unreadable. And that's when I realized the truth. The whole evening had been carefully planned. The nice conversation, the laughter, the shared memories, it had all been set up for this moment. Vivian continued, setting down her fork very carefully, as if this were the most important thing in the world. "Alara," she said, "we've been talking and we think it's time to discuss Mom and Dad's estate." My stomach felt like it had fallen straight through the floor. But I stayed calm on the outside. "What elephant?" I asked, even though I already knew what she meant. I realized then why they had wanted me to cook and serve first. Cyrus leaned forward and spoke in that professional banker voice he used when he wanted to sound smart and serious. "Look, we know Mom and Dad loved you. Nobody doubts that. But usually inheritance goes to biological children unless there are special instructions. That's just how it works in most families." Selena nodded, looking sad like she had no choice in what she was saying. "We're not trying to cut you out completely, Alara. But the house, the investments, and the life insurance, they should probably go to the biological children. It makes sense legally and practically." I blinked slowly, trying to understand. These were the same people who had barely visited Mom and Dad when they were sick. Now they were saying I didn't deserve the inheritance because I wasn't biologically their child. The nerve was shocking, but somehow not surprising. I kept my voice calm. Mom and Dad never cared about who was biological and who wasn't. They always treated us the same in love, expectations, and family belonging. Vivian waved her hand like I was a silly child. "Oh, Alara, parents always say that to be nice. But when it comes to real money, people care about bloodlines. It's natural. Besides, you're married to Oren. You have his support. The rest of us needed more financial security." Her logic was twisted. Because I was married, I supposedly needed less. Because I had cared for our parents, they deserved more. Selena added in her old, concerned tone, "You've been handling their care and finances. We just want to make sure everything's done properly. You're not experienced with estate planning." The poison in their words hung in the air. They weren't just saying I didn't deserve the inheritance. They were questioning my honesty, my ability, and my responsibility. I looked at my siblings' faces, hoping to see the people I once loved. Cyrus wouldn't meet my eyes. Selena was twisting her wedding ring nervously. Vivian still had her fake smile, proud of how diplomatic she was being. Then it hit me. This wasn't a fair discussion. They had planned the whole evening. They wanted me to feel guilty and give up my inheritance on my own. They thought that if they all acted together and made me feel like an outsider, I would just step aside. I stood slowly, the chair scraping loudly on Vivian's shiny floor. "Well," I said, my voice calm even though I felt an emotional earthquake inside. I walked to the kitchen to gather all the food I had made. Behind me, I could hear them whispering, probably deciding whether to call me back or try to push me into staying. "Alara, don't be dramatic," Cyrus called. "We're family. We can work this out reasonably. No need to get emotional." Reasonably? I thought. As if it was reasonable to ambush someone at a family dinner over inheritance. As if it was reasonable to judge someone because of who they were born to. I turned to face them one last time, my hands full of pie plates, the dessert I had made with Mom's love. "You know what's reasonable?" I asked. The daughter who spent 6 months caring for dying parents, sacrificing her health and time, deserves the same consideration as children who were too busy to help. Vivian's mask slipped slightly, showing desperation. "That's not fair, Alara. We had jobs, families, we couldn't just drop everything." I cut her off. I had a job, a husband, and children who needed me. But I had chosen to prioritize Mom and Dad because that's what family does. Or at least, that's what I thought family does. I picked up my purse and reached inside for the envelope I had been carrying for 3 weeks. The will reading was scheduled for 10 o'clock the next morning at Henderson & Associates, the law firm that had handled Mom and Dad's affairs for over 20 years. I looked around the room one last time. Cyrus was staring at his plate. Selena was twisting her ring even faster. Vivian's smile had gone brittle, the kind that shows someone is trying to hide panic. And I realized something important. No matter what they said, no matter what they planned, I had done the right thing. I had shown up with love in my heart. I had cared for our parents when they needed me most. I had honored Mom and Dad's memory in the way that mattered. I began carefully packing all the dishes I had prepared. Each plate, each pie, each casserole held memories of Mom and Dad. I thought about how they had loved us equally. They had taught me to cook, to care for others, and to value family. And that love didn't depend on blood. That love couldn't be measured by legal documents or money. Vivian's voice broke through my packing. "Alara, you don't have to do this. We can work this out." "No," I said quietly but firmly. "We can't work this out the way you want. You can't decide that my love, my care, and my effort don't matter. You can't decide I'm not part of this family because of biology. Mom and Dad already decided that, and I honor them by remembering it." I finished packing everything. The kitchen looked almost empty, like the love and hope I had brought with me had been sucked out. But inside me, I felt strong. I knew that my actions mattered more than their plans. I had chosen compassion over cruelty. I had chosen love over manipulation. I had chosen to stand for what was right. As I walked toward the door, I held my head high. I didn't need their approval or their agreement. I didn't need them to see me as deserving. I knew the truth in my heart. Mom and Dad loved me. I had done the right thing for them. And that was enough. I opened the front door and stepped outside. The air felt crisp and clean, almost like it was cheering me on. I could hear the faint sounds of Vivian, Cyrus, and Selena calling behind me, but I didn't turn back. I walked to my car, carrying the food, the memories, and my pride. Tomorrow, at the law firm, the will be read. But tonight, I had already won in my own way. I had protected what mattered. I remembered Mom and Dad. I had honored their love. And no one, not even my siblings, could take that away from me. I drove home slowly, thinking about all the moments I had shared with Mom and Dad, about how they had taught me to cook, to care, and to love. I thought about how they had treated all of us equally. And for the first time in a long time, I felt peace. I had faced their plan, their words, and their attacks, and I had stayed true to myself. And I knew deep down that Mom and Dad would be proud. I arrived 15 minutes early, wearing my best black suit. I carried a leather folder that Oren had given me for my birthday. Inside that folder were papers from my parents and a letter they had written to me. There were medical bills, insurance papers, bank statements, and other important documents about their lives while they were sick. I wanted to make sure I had everything in order. I didn't want to take any chances. When I walked into the big conference room, my brothers and sisters were already there. They were sitting close together, whispering and looking like they were planning a secret battle. Cyrus had brought his wife, Clara, who was a lawyer. She was very smart, sharp-eyed, and always looking for mistakes that she could use to her advantage. Selena was there with her husband, Tom. He ran his own accounting business and understood complicated money matters. Vivian was sitting alone. Her eyes were red from crying. She had tried to fix her makeup, but it was smudged, and I could tell she had been very upset. The family lawyer, George Henderson, was an older man in his 70s. He had known our parents since before I was even adopted. He greeted me with a warm smile and shook my hand. His voice was kind and sincere. "Alara, your parents spoke about you often," he said. "They were proud of how you cared for them during their last months. They noticed how you made sure they weren't alone." I noticed my siblings looking at each other in surprise and worry. Maybe they were wondering if George had already known about the letter my parents had given me. Maybe they realized that the fight they were planning might already be lost. George sat at the head of the long wooden table and opened a thick folder full of papers. "Before we start reading the will," he said, "I want to explain something first. Yesterday, Alara showed me a letter that your parents wanted her to have after the funeral. I assume she shared it with you." Cyrus cleared his throat and tried to sound important. "We've heard her version," he said. "But surely our parents didn't mean to leave everything to her. There must be a mistake. Maybe they were confused or not thinking clearly when they made these decisions." George didn't change his expression. His eyes became firm, like steel being hardened in a fire. "There is no mistake, Cyrus," he said. "Your parents came to me 8 months ago. They were very sick, but they made these changes carefully. They thought about them a lot, talked about them many times, and were of sound mind." Selena leaned forward. Her voice shook with worry. "But George, this doesn't seem like them. They always treated us equally. They never made any of us feel less important than the others. This doesn't feel like the parents we knew." "Did they?" George asked quietly. "Because I was there for many meetings about their estate and their plans. Alara was the only child who came. She asked questions about their care, made sure their wishes were understood, and helped them every day while they were sick." The room went completely quiet. Outside, I could hear cars driving past, and the air conditioner hummed softly. George opened the will, and began reading it in his calm, professional voice. The language was hard, full of legal words, but the meaning was clear. Everything, the house worth $300,000, investment accounts worth $180,000, life insurance worth $200,000, was left to me. None of it went to Cyrus, Selena, or Vivian. They weren't even mentioned except to say they were being excluded. But the most surprising part was what I learned next. There were accounts and money I didn't even know about. A savings account my parents had been putting money into for 15 years, meant for my children's college. Stock investments they had made in my name without telling me. A vacation fund they were saving for trips we would never get to take together. All of it added up to almost $600,000. I sat there stunned, trying to understand everything. My parents hadn't just left me money. They had been quietly building wealth for me and my family for years while I struggled to pay for everyday things. Cyrus was the first to explode. "This is insane," he shouted, standing up so fast that his chair fell backward and hit the wall. "No parent leaves everything to one child unless someone tricked them or forced them. Alara must have manipulated them while they were sick." George stayed calm, but his voice carried a warning. "Be very careful saying that. Your parents came to me alone without Alara present. They were clear about their wishes." Clara leaned forward. Her lawyer instincts were sharp. "We want to see all the documents, medical records showing your parents were thinking clearly, statements from witnesses, even video recordings if they exist. This is unusual. It suggests someone forced them, or they weren't thinking clearly." I finally found my voice. My words were calm but firm. "Forced? You mean like spending 6 months sleeping in hospital chairs, helping with medications, talking to doctors, cleaning their house, and paying their bills while your husbands and wives couldn't come even once?" Vivian started crying again. But this time it felt like she was performing, trying to make me feel guilty instead of showing real sadness. "Alara, how can you sit there acting like you deserve all this? We're family. Didn't we mean anything to you after all these years?" Her acting was impressive. I had to admit that. She was always good at pretending to be the victim when she didn't get what she wanted. Selena tried a different approach. She reached across the table, her eyes desperate. "Alara, please. Gideon and I are struggling. The kids need braces and we are behind on our mortgage. We would do the same for you if it was the other way around." "Would they?" I remembered asking for help with Mom and Dad. All three of them had excuses. Selena told me she was too busy with her book club when Dad fell. Cyrus said his bank wouldn't allow him to help with family finances. George cleared his throat to regain control. "There are a few more things to discuss," he said, pulling out more papers. "Your parents also left instructions about what happens if anyone tries to challenge this will." He handed me a sealed envelope with my name on it in Dad's careful handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it, wondering what surprises my parents had prepared. Inside was another letter from Dad, along with copies of legal papers and photographs. I read quietly, my eyes widening. My parents had planned for this exact moment and had thought everything through carefully. "What does it say?" Cyrus demanded, his voice tight and angry. I looked up at my siblings, who had spent the last hour attacking me and caring more about money than our parents. "It says that if anyone tries to fight this will in court," I read slowly, "they lose all rights to family heirlooms, photographs, and personal things. Mom's wedding ring, Dad's medals, old family photos, Christmas ornaments, and birthday memories will all go to charity." The threat hit them harder than losing the money. You could see it on their faces. Their greed could make them lose the very memories they claimed to value. Cyrus's jaw tightened. He looked like he was about to yell again, but he stopped. Selena's hand dropped slowly. Vivian kept wiping her tears, but her face showed panic. Even Clara, sharp-eyed and confident, looked worried for a moment. I sat there quietly, feeling a mix of sadness and pride. My parents had not only left me their money, they had left me the truth. They had trusted me to take care of their wishes, to honor their memory, and to protect their love. The rest of the meeting continued with George explaining the will and reading the instructions carefully. He described what would happen to every piece of property, every account, and every item my parents had left behind. He explained how my parents had made sure that I would be able to protect everything they cared about, including their personal things, memories, and money. The siblings asked questions, but their voices were quieter now. They realized that their anger and greed had no power over what my parents had decided. George reminded them that the instructions were clear and legally binding. They could try to fight, but the consequences were spelled out in the envelope I had received. By the end of the meeting, my siblings were quiet and sullen. The fight they had expected to win was gone. Everything my parents had worked for was meant for me. The letter and the extra documents had ensured that there would be no argument without serious consequences. I left the conference room carrying the folder and envelope close to my chest. Outside, the sunlight was bright and the air felt fresh. My parents' love and careful planning had guided me through a very difficult moment. They had protected me and my family, even after they were gone. As I walked to my car, I realized something important. My siblings' anger and disappointment couldn't change the fact that my parents had chosen wisely. They had chosen someone who had truly cared for them, who had been there in the hard times, and who had earned their trust. Their legacy was now in my hands, and I would honor it no matter what. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. My parents had made things right. They had given me the tools, the money, and the memories to continue their love and care for the family. And most importantly, they had shown me that honesty, hard work, and compassion mattered more than greed or anger. Even though my siblings were upset and angry, I knew one thing. My parents had trusted me, and I would not let them down. I would take care of everything they left behind, just as I had taken care of them in their final months. And with that thought, I drove home, holding the leather folder tightly, knowing that my parents' love and wisdom would guide me forever. Vivian was crying a lot now. Big, loud sobs that shook her whole body. And for the first time since everything started, it felt like she was really sad and not pretending. She whispered, her voice shaking, "They really did hate us. Our own parents hated us enough to leave us out completely." Hearing her words made my heart feel heavy. Even though my siblings and I had fought, argued, and hurt each other over the years, these were still the people I grew up with. These were the brothers and sisters I had once loved very much. But anger, jealousy, and family problems had poisoned our relationships and made everything worse. "They didn't hate you," I said softly. "I really meant it, even though I was still angry. They were disappointed in you. There's a difference." Cyrus's face turned red with anger. "Disappointed? We all have good jobs, nice families, and happy kids. We've built good lives for ourselves. What more could they have wanted from us?" I looked at him calmly. The answer was simple, but it hurt to say it out loud. They wanted your time. They wanted your care when they needed it most. Your phone calls that weren't just asking for money or favors. Your visits lasted longer than an hour and weren't rushed or scheduled around something more important than family. They wanted your love, not your achievements. The truth hung in the air like a heavy cloud. None of us wanted to breathe it in, but deep down, I knew everyone understood that I was right. We had all taken our parents for granted. We thought there would always be another time to spend more time with them, to show we cared, to be better kids. But life had a way of moving too fast, and sometimes it was too late. George began gathering his papers, signaling that the official part of the meeting was over. "Elara," he said, "you'll need to come in next week to sign the transfer papers and to talk about the practical things about your inheritance. The house can be transferred right away, but some of the bank accounts and investments will take several weeks to process through the proper channels." As everyone prepared to leave the room that had changed our lives forever, Selena made one last desperate plea. "Elara, please, can't we at least split the house? It's where we all grew up together. It has so many family memories. Surely that means something to you." I thought about that house. It was the place where I had never really felt like I belonged, even though I had lived there for decades. My siblings had reminded me every day that I was different. I had always felt like a guest, someone visiting, instead of a real family member with equal standing. "You're right," I said, standing up and putting on my coat with calm determination. "It does have a lot of family memories. Most of them are painful for me." I walked toward the door, then turned back to look at them one last time. These were the people who had shaped my childhood and, at the same time, hurt me in ways I was still discovering. I'll be putting the house on the market in the next few months. The memories there aren't ones I want to keep or live with anymore. The drive home felt surreal, like I was traveling through a dream. Everything looked familiar but strange, like the world had changed in a night. In just 2 days, I had gone from being the family outcast to having financial security I had never imagined. I kept thinking about my parents' wisdom and the sacrifices they had made. Even while Oren and I struggled to pay bills and worry about our kids' future, our parents had quietly built a safety net for us. When I got home, Oren was waiting in the kitchen with a cup of coffee. His eyes were full of concern. "How bad was it?" he asked, pulling me into his arms like I might shatter. I buried my face in his chest and finally let myself cry. Not from sadness or anger, but from overwhelming gratitude for parents who had protected and provided for us, even after they were gone. They left us everything, I whispered against his shoulder. The house, the investments, all of it. We are financially secure for the first time in our lives. Oren pulled back to look at me, searching my face to make sure he had heard me correctly. When I nodded, he lifted me off the floor and spun me around in the kitchen, laughing and crying at the same time. Our kids, Lyra and Eamon, came running when they heard the noise. At 12 and 10, they were old enough to understand that Grandma and Grandpa had died, but too young to grasp all the complexities of inheritance and family drama. "What's happening?" Lyra asked, looking concerned by all the emotions in the kitchen. I knelt down to their level and held their hands. "Grandma and Grandpa left us some money to help take care of our family," I explained simply. "It means Daddy and I won't have to work so many extra hours. We can do some special things together." Eamon's eyes lit up. "Does this mean we can finally get a dog?" Oren and I looked at each other and burst out laughing. Leave it to our children to see what really mattered: family, safety, and the simple joys in life. Over the next few weeks, I began the complex process of settling my parents' estate. The house would take months to prepare for sale. There were decades of belongings to sort through, repairs to make, and legal paperwork that couldn't be rushed. Meanwhile, my siblings did not leave quietly as I had hoped. Cyrus called repeatedly, sometimes angry and threatening legal action, sometimes pleading about family loyalty. Selena showed up at our house twice uninvited, crying about her financial struggles and begging me to reconsider sharing the inheritance. Vivian sent cards and flowers regularly, as if grief gifts could repair the damage between us. Through it all, I held firm to my decision. I wanted to honor my parents' wishes exactly as they had intended. The most unexpected opportunity came in the middle of a normal day. I was at the grocery store when someone called my name. Ilara Williams. I turned to see Iris Tan, a social worker from the hospital who had helped coordinate my parents' care during their final weeks. "Iris, how wonderful to see you," I said, genuinely happy to meet someone who had been so supportive during the darkest days. We chatted for a few minutes about how I was doing and how our family was healing after our loss. Then her expression grew serious. "Ilara, I hope you don't mind me asking, but do you remember mentioning that you were adopted?" I nodded, curious where the conversation was going. "Yes. Why?" She glanced around the busy store and then leaned closer. Her voice became quiet and confidential, like social workers do when they talk about sensitive things. "There's a situation at work that made me think of you. 2 little girls, sisters, ages 3 and 4. Their parents both died from COVID about 6 weeks ago, and they're in our system now. They don't have any relatives able or willing to take them. They're in temporary foster care, but the system is overwhelmed. They need a permanent home, and they need it soon. They are sweet girls, Aurora and Juniper, but they've been through a lot of trauma." My heart immediately ached. Another family destroyed by this terrible disease. Children who needed love and a safe home. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, though I already had a feeling. Iris smiled warmly, the kind of smile someone gives when they know something wonderful might happen. "Because watching you with your parents, seeing how devoted you were, how much love you had even in the worst circumstances, I thought maybe you'd want to meet them. Maybe choose them to be part of your family." Driving home, her words echoed in my mind like a song I couldn't stop humming. 2 little girls who had lost everything, just like I had once. Children who needed someone to choose them, to make them part of a family, to show them that love could be stronger than loss. I told Oren about the conversation. He was quiet for a long moment, thinking carefully about what I was suggesting. "What are you thinking?" he asked gently, knowing by the look in my eyes that I was already emotionally invested. "I'm thinking about how it felt to be 4 years old and not know if anyone would ever want me," I said quietly. Over the next few months, Oren and I went through the long adoption process. Home visits, background checks, financial evaluations, and psychological assessments. Lyra and Eamon were interviewed separately about how they felt about adding siblings to our family. They were both excited. Lyra immediately started planning how she would teach the girls to braid hair, and Eamon declared he would share all his favorite toys. The process took 8 long months of paperwork, interviews, and legal procedures. But finally, we brought Aurora and Juniper home. That first night, as I tucked them into their beds and read the same story 3 times, Juniper looked up at me with serious, dark eyes. "Are you really our mama now forever?" she asked. I smoothed her hair and kissed her forehead. "Forever and always, sweetheart. You're safe now. You're home." A year later, I was hosting Sunday dinner at our new house. We had enough bedrooms for everyone and a big backyard where all 4 kids could play safely. I watched Lyra teaching Aurora and Juniper to make friendship bracelets, while Eamon helped Oren grill burgers. I felt complete in a way I had never experienced before. My phone rang during dessert. It was Vivian. "Alara," her voice sounded tentative. "I saw the adoption announcement in the newspaper. You looked so happy. I forgave you all months ago," I said after she spoke. "But forgiveness doesn't mean we can go back to being family. Too much has been said and done." After I hung up, Oren wrapped his arms around me. "Everything's perfect," I said, and this time I meant it completely.